all of us as Americans to understand. Let me take you through this as best I can. I want to begin this newscast with a notion that's going to really be turned on its ear, or turn on its ear. Much of what you and I hear about the poor, about the wealthy, about the economy, about the United States of America, if you listen to these guys on talk radio, some of whom make hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, generally defending the money guys, defending the super rich, night in and night out, you know who I'm talking about. You will hear this, and you have heard this consistent narrative. We're being held back by high taxes in this country, high tax rates. Cut taxes on the wealthy, and zoom, there it goes. Our economy is going to be back with a vengeance. Get the government off our backs, and all our problems in this country are going to be solved. This is what you hear, right? I mean, I'm not making this up. And by the way, the mess we're still digging out from, it's not Wall Street's fault. Not a thing to do with the government turning a blind eye to the high-rolling financial shenanigans of some people on Wall Street. No, not at all. It's the poor people's fault, who brought the rest of us to our knees. Mostly, by the way, I know you hear this. I know you hear this. Mostly minorities, them Hispanics and them blacks, who bought the homes that they couldn't afford. They defaulted on those loans, and then we all went down. By golly, you think I'm kidding about this? Look, here's one of the biggest media darlings of this message.
Why don't you put up a website to have people vote on the internet as a referendum to see if we really want to subsidize the losers' mortgages?
This guy's a superstar now. That's right, superstar. Losers. Remember that? If you lose your job and you end up defaulting on your mortgage, you are a loser. That was the rant that fueled, in many ways, the Tea Party movement. Quit subsidizing the losers, America. Let me show you something else. I want to show you. Hey, Rob, you good there? Where's the newspaper? I want to bring you the newspaper that I had here just a moment ago. Here it is. Here's the New York Times. All right? What's that say? Can you see it? Biggest defaulters on mortgages are the rich. So who are the losers? Hispanics, minorities, black people who bought more home than they could really afford? Once again, let's look at this. The biggest defaulters on mortgages are the rich. More than 1 in 7. Here, I highlighted this so you can see it, and I want to share it with you. Stay with me, Robert. Stay with me. More than 1 in 7 homeowners with loans in excess of $1 million is seriously delinquent. Okay? Now, let's look at the rest of us, people like you and me. About 1 in 12 mortgages below the $1 million mark is delinquent. Who are the losers again? Who are the losers again, Mr. Centilli or whatever your name is? Okay, the article goes on to say, though it's hard to prove, the data suggests that many of the well-to-do are purposely dumping their financially draining properties. They're doing this on purpose. You know what? I don't want it. I'll dump it. Just as they would any other sour investment. Fine, but let's be clear. The rich aren't paying their mortgages, and at a higher rate than anyone else. Hold that thought for a minute, because I want to make a point about taxes now. To hear the narrative out there, you would think that we're the highest taxed nation on the planet, in the history of the planet. You hear it every day on your way home. Just turn on your radio, folks. In fact, there's another list out that I want to show you of the top 30 industrial nations in the world. Where do you think the United States ranks? Now, you hear every single day, we're the most taxed country in the world. No question about it. And it's all these politicians and the government. And where do you think we are? Of all the developed countries in the world, where do you think we are as far as the tax rate? Where do you think we are? 26th. 26th out of 30. I mean, that's according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. 26 out of 30. Again, here's the list. Here's my highlight marks that I put right there. You see it. We are right after, here, I'll tell you. Who comes before us? Switzerland, Mexico, and Australia. Who comes after us? Ireland, Luxembourg, Iceland, and New Zealand. Again, And then let's look at another number. I want to share one more with you. You ready? This is from the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities based on data issued last month by the Congressional Budget Office. It shows that the income gaps between the richest 1% of Americans and the middle and poorest fifths of the country more than tripled over the last 3 decades. You see that line right there? See that red line compared to the yellow line? In other words, in the last 3 decades, the rich have gotten 3 times richer, the poor 3 times poorer. And that's not even rich and poor, by the way. It may not be good usage of the word poor. What we're really saying is the super rich compared to the rest of us. That's the other 99% of the U.S. Well, pretty much flat. They keep going, and we're treading water. By the way, to that top 1% goes 17% of the income after taxes. I want to bring Professor Danny Boston, Professor of Economics at Georgia Tech University. How are you, Professor?
I'm fine.
Good
How
to
about
see
you?
Anything about what I just said right there surprise you?
You know, it is surprising, actually, because it debunks the stereotype.
Yeah.
You know, the stereotype is that it's the subprime mortgages that are responsible for the housing crisis. And what we see is that that is a stereotype, and it's just the reverse.
But we hear we're the most taxed country in the world. That seems to show that maybe we really aren't. We're 26 of the 30 developing nations. We hear that it was the poor people who bought too many homes that they couldn't afford. Now we got a statistic saying, no, that's not true. In fact, it's the rich who've been the most delinquent and defaulted on their mortgages. It's like statistic after statistic seems to be. Why is it that we in America are so easily led to go against our own interest? Because, and you know what I mean by that. Most of the people who are super rich in this country are what, 1%? Then there's 99% of the rest of us. And yet if you look at studies politically and sociologically, you would find that at least half of that 99% is pulling for the rich guy and saying, oh yeah, it's not his fault, it's our fault. Why would we do that?
Well, you know, it goes back to the ideology of the country, and it's always a struggle and a tug of war between these competing ideologies. On the one hand, it's ideology that says that the markets can solve all problems.
Can they? Can they?
Well, no. We've seen that we can't allow, I mean, the Great Depression was the first graphic example of why you cannot just sit back and allow and expect the markets to solve all problems in the economy. And we just went through...
But they can solve many of them.
They can.
Markets can solve. If we leave the market alone, oftentimes, it will deal with problems effectively.
Absolutely. What you have to do is to understand the areas of the economy and of society that are best solved by market forces and entrepreneurship, and the areas where those markets are deficient at addressing those kinds of problems.
So what you're saying is it's a combination of the two.
Absolutely.
We need a mixed approach.
Absolutely.
Why is that so hard to sell?
Well, again, it is dependent upon who you're talking to. It's not hard to sell if you are, for example, on the Democratic side that has a philosophy that markets are not infallible. But on the Republican side, generally speaking, that's another philosophy. And so this kind of is rooted in really hundreds of years of philosophical outlook on how the economy operates, and then that gets rolled up into political agendas.
Well, you know, a lot of the folks who would criticize someone like you, they would criticize you, first of all, because you're a college professor, which in their mind makes you overeducated and thus stupid. But is that something that's frustrating as well, that you know this stuff and can explain it as easily as you just did to us,